All right, so welcome everybody. This is Dennis Hart with Hart and Dynamics. I'm joined by my good friend Anthony Ornella. He has actually been in and around the same networking groups that I've been for probably the last couple of years, I would say, right, Anthony? So it's quite a bit. So he's he calls himself a personal CFO with an organization called Jared Bunch, right? Did I get that right?
That is all correct. Yeah.
All right, perfect. All right, so making money work for people. So that's important. So the conversation that we had that I wanted to get captured for my partners and my relationships was really around the Secure Act that came out in January and 401ks. I don't deal with them every day, but it's in the benefit space, so it comes up for me. And you and I had an interesting conversation about some of the regs and things that have come out recently. So can you paint a little bit of a picture around, what do you see as a concern or what is happening based on your experience now that the thing's been out, 6 months, not that we count the 3 months that nobody could do anything?
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to talk with you as always, Dennis. The ERISA, if you ever need help going to sleep at night, grab yourself a copy of the ERISA law, which regulates all of the qualified plans that are out there for employees. It's thick and it's dense. It was really a movement that started well before January. More and more employers were being sued by employees from lack of investment options or lack of investment oversight expenses. And so the Secure Act was a regulatory movement to kind of empower employees, but also to keep employers accountable. Obviously, it started up with the higher end, the very large companies, but it has been over the since the Secure Act, lawsuits by employees against their employers has unfortunately been on the rise.
Okay. So we talk about that a little bit even in healthcare, right? So in 401ks, as it moved from pensions, which were just company funded money where you can do whatever you want if you're the company, to now being investment money coming from employees, they want more say-so, they want more oversight, and technically the employer is ultimately, the buck kind of stops with them when they put these plans in place. Is that an accurate statement?
Very, very important statement that you just made there. Yeah, and I think that is unfortunately a big oversight that many employers don't consider, is that when you offer a qualified retirement plan or a retirement plan to your employees, you as the employer are the liable party, not the third-party administrator, not the investment advisory firm or a team that kind of built out the investment options for you. But you as the employer, you're the one that is liable, and your company, even in certain cases, you personally can be liable to against those legal actions.
So the performance of the fund, the fees of the fund, who's actually managing it. And are you seeing the same thing I am, where you hire somebody you feel like is your trusted advisor, and you don't always know what they know, right? And you don't always know that they're giving you the best advice. So is there anything you can share around, just what do you recommend that employers do to just try and keep it simple? They've got a million other things to worry about, right? So this is just one thing. So what are some simple tools that you could recommend?
Yeah, very, very great point to start. And keeping it, again, pretty high level, because you can dive deep into these things, as it is a complex world. But when we're engaging with employers, we're engaging with people that are in charge of facilitating a retirement plan for their employees. Very simple question is, how did we get here? Not negatively, not negative speaking, just a critical look at how did we get here? And really 4 basic questions that you really, as the employer, again, as the one who's liable, should really be able to answer the questions of, how were the funds selected?
Okay.
Did I go with a big financial institution that implements the same exact retirement plan and retirement investment options for everyone? What if you hire only age 50 plus? Did they take in consideration your employees' demographic? What if you're hiring kids just out of college? Their investment choices, that matters.
Sure.
And that's been a study that came out that you'll see a laundry list. If you've ever seen a 401k investment options, there seems like there's hundreds of options.
Yeah.
Well, over 10 options, 90 something, it's more than 90%. They just click the first one they see, and they auto enroll, and they just move forward with it. And so asking yourself, how were the funds selected? Was it tailored to your company? Was it tailored to your demographic? Or was it the same thing that the person to your right and the left were getting? You touched on it, you mentioned it too, Dennis, is expenses. And that is one of the bigger kind of focal points for employees, is especially after they leave employment, is what are these expenses for? What am I actually getting for the expenses? A vast majority of qualified plans are mutual fund heavy in their portfolios, which mutual funds are a vehicle to use. I would say the downside of them, they are expensive. Mm-hmm. Depending on how long you've held them, what kind of class of a mutual fund they are, they can get quite expensive on the transaction fees. So looking at the expenses and what are the expenses, and then as we're going to get into these next couple questions, what are you getting for those expenses? Not just the advisory fee, not just the transaction fees, but as the plan functions, you may be paying the same competitive market, fee structure, but for one single thing, and that is just investment options. So to kind of recap here, I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole. So how were the funds selected? How did we get here to this fund choice?
Okay.
Number two is the expenses. How were the expenses kind of laid out and structured, and what are you getting for those expenses? And the next two, and I kind of joke, this is where I really make the money. And when we talk with people, is how is it getting benchmarked? Now, it's really easy to focus on rate of return. Really easy to focus on, hey, this fund is performing this, and it's quite easy to do an analysis on that. Is, oh, well, this is going to be average rate of return, 7% over the long haul. These are retirement plans. Obviously, most people don't touch these for a very long time. So, looking at rate of return should be done, but it's not necessarily a good starting point. How is the plan running? When people are taking distributions, whether they're actively or post employment, how are the loans being repaid? What is the performance of the employees actually using it? All of those things. How actively involved is the third-party administrator with compliance? How active is the investment advisory firm with the compliance piece? How active is the investment advisory firm with engaging with not just the employer, but the individual employees as well? So benchmarking is far more than just rate of return. Sure. It's much more of a holistic approach to the overarching plan itself.
All right. And do you feel like does everybody do benchmarking? I mean, how many employers out of 100 employers, how many do you think look and see what theirs is doing compared to their peer group around them?
So again, very good point. And you bring it back to the crux of the issue here. It's the employer's responsibility to benchmark.
Okay.
Employer's response. So they may think that the investment advisory firm is doing it, but unless it's set in writing and the contract says so, they don't necessarily have to unless they're requested to, because it is typically it is done on a regular basis. Benchmarking is done at least annually, but not necessarily, especially when we're talking about, just for lack of a better term, smaller accounts, 50 million of assets, maybe under $50 million in assets. But how often is it being done? I would say, as you mentioned, they've got a million other things to think about. This is one of those things, hey, it's a set it and forget it. It's a set it and forget it. And there is, I've seen a lot of red flags. Let's put it that way.
All right, well, that's fair enough. I know, the regulations that put you guys under, I know you got to be really careful about making, broad statements because there are so many exceptions. But, how do you, define success for an employer on behalf of their employees? Like, give me some of your things you look for high level.
That's fantastic. A great segue into that fourth question. It is benchmarking employee success. Peter Welsh, who is our resident 401k expert, has got this great quote. They are retirement plans for a reason. They're not asset accumulation plans.
Yeah.
And so employee success is not just having a robust investment choices. It's not just having tailored strategies for your demographic, but it's also auxiliary services that you do provide for your employees. So what's the digital experience look like? Is there some website? Is there a portal? Is there an app that they can use to go in to make beneficiary changes quickly, to make asset allocation changes quickly, and to just track it, and to use it as technology becomes a bigger and bigger part? Do your employees have access to some kind of technology? And also, in this is a recent study, I don't want to quote it, but a recent study that just came out in June really showed that employers have a very high, they place a very high value on employee financial wellness.
Sure.
So what does your plan, what does your retirement plan offer from the source of education or videos or a library of resources? Or Jared Bunch offers the JD Wealth Fit, which is a robust self-study course that comes standard for all participants. So are they dealing with student debt? Are they going to send their kid to college? Or, do they just want some basic financial literacy? And it's accessible, it's very robust, and having that in place makes people less stressed about money when they actually know that there's some form of a plan in place. They come to work and crush it for you more.
Yeah.
The stats are out there. People that are stressed out about personal things, whether it's health, whether it's finances, they're less productive at work. And so
not bringing the top performance.
it decreases your liability for productivity too. If you have resources, again, off your table, you don't want to have to facilitate financial wellness courses for your people, but to have the resources available to them, and to have a team that's willing to work with the employees at any level, from entry level to the most senior. Everyone's world is a little bit different. And another key component of employee success is when they're gone. You've had an employee for 30 plus years working for you and then bled for you for 30 plus years. And they were great savers all along the way. Well, when they leave, now they just have this gigantic pot of money. What do they do with it?
Sure.
So that kind of back end success too is, are they running out of money too fast? Who's there to provide some kind of guiding hand, or at least some resources for them to say, hey, you should keep it in the markets. Hey, you should maybe diversify into other things. But employee success, yes, your employer, if as an employer, you care about your employees while they're working for you, but there's something to be said about on the back end when they've given you their time, when they've given you their life's energy. Are you providing for success till the end of time? There's no greater spokesperson than a happy employee.
That's great. So give us the so what? So what's the cost of doing nothing from your standpoint? What if, it's easier to just sit still, right? So
especially, and as you can probably relate to, Dennis, it can be tough to get the momentum moving on something like this, changing your 401k plan, or making a big overhaul. Sometimes plans are great and they just need some fine tuning. Sometimes they're a wreck and you need to kind of build from square one. The cost of doing nothing, if you do have red flags and your employees aren't happy with their choices, if they kind of are staring down the barrel of the rest of their life and their money's drying up, that makes people scared. That makes people frustrated. And, that's when, legal battles do come. It could be a little bit, it could be a whole lot of money. And it's not just your company that'll be paying the price. It'll be you as the employer paying the price as well.
That's great. I know having somebody take a strategic look at it's always a good idea. I think, we talked about different people have different needs. You got 5 generations in the workforce. Their demands are going to be significantly different. I started to allude to this earlier, but we're seeing some of the same pressures now. So much of the cost for healthcare is being shifted off to the employee. There are smart employers that are figuring out, and smart employers that are figuring out that they have to know what's going on with their plan, or they're putting themselves potentially at risk. There's not been as many lawsuits as there was on the 401k side, but we think those days are coming. And then ultimately, the employers that we work with that are forward thinking, they want to take care of their people, these are things they want to pay attention to. So I appreciate you taking a minute and just bringing it to the forefront and letting us know that there's something they need to look at. Something did change in January. I know we spoke about it, and a lot of people say, well, we've got that covered, or my guy's got that covered, and we know full well their guy may not have that covered. So it's worth at least asking the questions, right? They don't necessarily have to engage us, but they need to ask their current advisor what is going on. And if they don't feel like they're getting a clear or a straight or a concise answer, then it's probably time to at least just check out some other ideas or other options or start some other dialogue. I tell people there's never a too soon to get started in some of these conversations. I had a really smart person in Tampa tell me that, you know, they wanted to get to know the doctor long before they ever needed that doctor. And I thought that was just brilliant advice. So anyway, so I'll pass that along to you. I think that's solid for what we do. People a lot of times wait to the last minute. They get in the trenches, run out of time to make meaningful change, a positive change. So this is a good opportunity for risk and a good opportunity to really attract and retain the best talent. So that's why I was excited to kind of get your story out. So if there's anything I can do for you, Anthony, let us know. Is there anything that we missed or you want to add on before we jump off?
No, and again, just to kind of round out that point there is, it's unfortunate that the employer is the one that is liable. You know, you carry certain insurances to protect you, to shield you, and to mitigate the risk. And unfortunately, with the changes, it just kind of opened the gate wide. You know, Constantinople was a beautiful big city. They left one side gate open, and it led to complete ruin.
Yeah.
And can be tough, but doing nothing is oftentimes more expensive than doing something. But
yeah.
I love what you said. It's never too early to start the conversation.
Yeah, no, I totally, you know, it makes a difference. So I want to work with people that I know. And so if you've been working with somebody for a long time and you've got a lot of questions, you know, maybe get somebody else's insight. That's my recommendation. You know, frequently with what I do, not everybody's getting all the information, and that's the parts that I tend to expose for people. So it's good. It opens some great opportunities and great relationships. So Anthony, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I will have your contact information out someplace, either up here, wherever I can fit it in the screen. We'll get that done. And reach out to Anthony or myself if you've got any questions or want to further the dialogue. So thank you very much, man.
Thanks so much, Dennis. It was great talking with you.
You too, man.